Growing up in the 2000s, there were a few basic things that were non-negotiably cool. Skateboards, video games, Paramore's 2007 sophomore album Riot, and of course, ninjas. And the geniuses at LEGO knew this very well, so sometime in 2010 they started cooking up a theme so perfectly sick, so radically awesome, that no child ages 8 to 14 could possibly ignore it. LEGO Ninjago. From the start, this theme clicked with me. I was instantly drawn in by the brightly colored ninjas, and that each of them had their own color and element. I don't know why, but I was a huge fan of characters that are just different colors of the same character with different elements, like in Castle Crashers or in Avatar, the way that each kingdom's represented by a color and an element. It just scratches my brain in a weird way, and I loved it as a kid. LEGO had used this idea before in other sets like Bionicle or Knights, where there's a variety of armor colors and you have to collect all of them, but it was always just something I loved as a kid, debating in my mind whether I liked the blue knight or the red knight more, and if I would have fire magic or ice magic. And as a kid who actually played with the LEGO toys, the building value that we got out of these ninja headpieces coming in a variety of colors was so amazing, because at the time, as far as I remember, it only came in black and sometimes white, but having this in a range of colors was a new thing that I was super excited about for custom characters. And on top of all that, this line was even further primed for success because its main gimmick of spinjitzu spinners played directly into the success of Beyblades that were just absolutely going crazy at this time. The exact form of these spinners has changed quite a bit over time, and there was actually a gap between like 2012 and 2018 where they didn't produce any spinners, and this was actually kind of where I lost interest in the theme, because the spinners are just such a cool part of this theme, and just a play feature that is so interesting, and I guess not super LEGO because you're not building anything, but still very fun. I just thought it was neat. But thankfully, since 2018, they've brought the spinners back and have started to get really inventive with how they work. And I actually think the current iteration of the spinners that we have are the best that we've had so far. So I'm actually really glad that's something that stayed through the theme even to today, because I feel like that's something they very easily could have just moved away from and started doing other sets. So shout out LEGO for keeping true to the spinner. But beyond all that, the main reason that people know about this theme at all, and what truly solidified my interest in it, was the animated show that aired on Cartoon Network. This show was an absolute match made in heaven. One of my favorite things to do already while playing with Legos was to sit and watch Cartoon Network. So to get a show that was about Legos blew my little mind. When the theme first came out and I was buying the initial sets, Jay was my favorite of the ninjas, but after watching the actual show, I started to fall in love with Zane's more calm demeanor, and holy fucking shit, the twist when they revealed that he was a robot changed my entire fucking world, dude. My favorite ninja wasn't a real boy? I legitimately felt betrayed and was so upset by this. I think Jay went back to being my favorite after it, but god, that twist got my ass as a child. I was so distraught, man. And actually thinking back to it, I think that happens relatively early in the show, but you know what? I got attached easily. I don't know. I got attached early to the don't say white ninja. I was also a pretty big fan of Kai, just because I always pick fire starters in Pokemon and just loved the color red, weirdly obsessively, kind of an indicator of other problems to come that we should have seen coming sooner. And I got this alarm clock of him from the Lego store at Disneyland, which I still have. And Cole is there too, I guess. I'm sorry, when you're fighting alongside fire and ice mages and your only magic power is basically just pocket sand, I'm not gonna get that interested in you. I'm sorry, dude. When going back to write about this series, I realized that what I had considered to be the original season was actually just the pilot season of only 4 episodes that they ended up compressing into two-part episodes. But that was a shock to me because I could have sworn there was more, just based on how much those episodes impacted me. Of that original line of sets that came out alongside the pilot series, I had the Spinjitzu starter set, Zane's Dragon, the Dojo, the Fire Temple, and the Ninja Training Outpost, just so I could complete the main team, which looking back on it is actually a good chunk of the sets that came out. But then beyond that initial wave of sets, my interest in the theme kind of waned. The theme changed with season 2 enough that I, even as an 11-year-old, was like, nah, this ain't the real Ninjago. I know Ninjago. This ain't Ninjago. But if I go back and actually look at the dates, these new Ninjago sets only came out a year after the original line. So it's kind of interesting just how time shifts your perspective on things. But regardless of whether it was the theme actually changing or me just getting a little bit older, this next line just was not as interesting to me. I also just think the snakes were way less interesting as enemies than the skeletons were, and I was not a fan of the way that most of the builds went from these interesting ninja-styled structures and environments, which served as a perfect backdrop to just an infinite number of stories that I could tell in my child mind, to a car that looks like a snake, or a mech that looks like a snake. It was just not my thing, okay? I still ended up watching the entire, what they consider the official first season of the show, but I didn't like it nearly as much because, okay, listen, maybe I'm just a hater, but I really liked Lloyd being a dorky little evil kid and was not vibing with him taking over the entire show as the Green Ninja instead of Kai, when obviously it was supposed to be Kai. Yes, I'm still kind of bitter about this over a decade later. My guy got robbed by this little fuck who wasn't even supposed to be a real character in the first season. Really, what all this intro that most people probably skipped over by now is trying to say is that if anyone should have known about this video game, a DS game based on the original season of Ninjago, it should have been me, right? But somehow I only found out this game existed in the last year. I think it's entirely possible that I kind of vaguely knew about this game as a kid, or at the very least saw it in a Toys R Us, but I was probably still just feeling burned from my first experience playing LEGO Battles and had yet to get the bad taste associated with the word battles out of my mouth, so I just never picked the game up, and to this day I have never played it. But for how much I've praised the pilot season of Ninjago, I feel like it's only right for me to play the game that was inspired by it. I'm not going to explain what an RTS is or how this game works in specifics, because I already did that in my last LEGO Battles video. If you're interested in hearing more about that game, go check that out in the link in the description, or just click up here. So instead, I'm just going to jump directly into this game and some of the big changes that it made from the first game. The first big thing is I really would not consider this game an RTS. It uses the same control style as LEGO Battles and ultimately shares most of the features from the original game, but the way they utilize them feels more like a basic LEGO game attempting to be crushed within this RTS framework, whereas LEGO Battles felt more like a basic RTS that just happened to have a LEGO skin applied over top of it, if that makes sense. This is really evident by the fact that you don't actually build anything for the vast majority of the campaign, instead just being tasked with fighting enemies and breaking objects to collect studs, finding mini kits, you know, things that are much more standard in a normal Traveler's Tales LEGO game. In some ways I could see this being seen as an improvement if you went into this game expecting something more explicitly LEGO, but then if that's the reason you're playing this game, I have a big question. Why is this an RTS? Stuff like combat and exploration don't feel particularly great with this control layout, and the few things that benefit from this control scheme, like managing larger armies, building structures, and things like that from the first game, aren't even present for most of the story. So there were many times throughout playing this game I found myself asking, why are we even doing this? Because the end result is that this game ends up feeling less like a LEGO game or less like an RTS and more just like a really limited ARPG, kind of like Diablo or something. I don't hate this. I will admit that it grew on me, but it's really not what I was expecting from a LEGO Battles game. And just as another example to even further drive this move away from RTS gameplay, the game only has two types of units, builders and heroes. No more building large armies of units, no more vehicles, no more horsemen, no more catapults, no more dragons. Instead, you pick from a group of 6 heroes who will make up your army, and the only real development that you get to go through with them is just waiting to build up enough resources to upgrade them to improve their power and unlock some of their special skills, which act pretty similarly to the hero skills in the previous game, where there's just 2, generally a status and then a more active ability. And thankfully some of the heroes actually do return from the last game, like Brickbeard and Santa, and they also have some cool new units who appear in this game, like the Pharaoh or the Zombie, but overall this change to the unit composition was not a welcome one for me. The biggest reason for that is that when compared to the last game, there really isn't any customization with your army anymore. Like in the last game, if you wanted to take it seriously and build a balanced army of different unit types, you could do that, but if you also wanted to make an army that was just entirely dragons, you could do that too. Now you're forced into using a group of 6 very similar units who, like, sure, I guess have slightly different abilities and sprites, but comparing to the range of units like pirate ships and alien cruisers to skeleton with a hat or skeleton in a car. It's like the unit variety is notably lacking here. I suppose you get a bit of customization with the upgrades because each unit has a starter level, level 1 upgrade, and then level 2, and I guess in theory you can mix and match these levels amongst your army, but realistically level 2 is stronger on almost all of these units, so there's never really any reason to not just stand around and wait to upgrade to it, which, by the way, takes way too goddamn long to do and took up so much of my time playing this game. There is also some level of customization in that each hero has slightly different attacks and specialties, with some performing better at close range, further range, but I feel like these differences in the units are just a shadow of the variety that we had in the last game. Now, more positively, in terms of changes that I actually like, this game is visually pretty different from the first one, opting for a cuter, more chibi art style that I actually think works a lot better than the original game, not just for character expression and having these more detailed sprites, but just for the overall visibility while swiping around the map. I found that it was a lot easier to individually select the units just because they were bigger on the screen, which awesome change, thank you so much. I was also a big fan of this game's visual presentation just in general, from little stuff like its UI to the fact that instead of a main menu, the game actually has you walking through this physical hub world dojo thing. I'll admit that it got a little bit annoying towards the end as I continued to play the game and wished that there was just, like, for time saving's sake, a way for me to just go into a menu, but overall you can tell that they really wanted this game to look and feel good from an aesthetic perspective, which I do appreciate. As I previously mentioned, the story for this game is based on the 4 pilot episodes for Ninjago and follows them pretty closely and accurately, actually. The game's split between 2 campaigns, each representing one side of the same story, with the ninja and skeleton stories. They're each split into 3 acts. I did not describe that well. This is much like the hero and villain stories in the original game, but there's only 2 stories rather than 6, which I'm totally okay with considering how long it must have taken to create the stories in the first game, so that 2 is more than enough. And this is just totally a random aside that I didn't know where else to put in the video, but there is not a single guide online for this game. Finding stuff on LEGO Battles was already difficult, but finding stuff for LEGO Ninjago Battles is genuinely impossible. There is one site that is the LEGO Battles wiki that has a page on LEGO Battles Ninjago, and there's some information here, but it's so limited and just based on random stuff that people decided to put in here, so as a reference page, it was okay, but goddamn, this is real. I am doing digital archaeology in here, man. I'm scraping dust off of the fossils, brother. We're going where no one's gone before. This shit has been previously undocumented, bro. Anyway, okay, so obviously we have to start with the ninja side of the story. So here's the part you've probably been waiting for and just waiting for me to be done rambling. Here it is, the ninja story. First off, I love that the main menu theme of this game is just a little, like, reinterpolation of the theme from the first game. Super nice touch if you played both games. It opens up with a cutscene introducing us to our first 3 ninjas, Cole, Jay, and Zane. I thought at first that these cutscenes were actually pulled from the show because they look so good, but all of them were made exclusively for this game, which is really impressive. According to someone on Brickpedia, the game was actually supposed to have cel-shaded cutscenes, probably something like the comic series, if anybody remembers that, but they ended up going with these cutscenes that were meant to replicate the look of the show, and to that end, I think they did an amazing job, because I was fooled. His first mission as is playing is Sensei Wu, the master of the ninjas, as he brings his new recruits back to his dojo in preparation for the evil Garmadon's return. Along the way, we get some exposition about how Sensei Wu banished Garmadon because he had attempted to gather all 4 of the magical golden weapons, after which you stop to learn some of the game's controls. You then come across a couple skeletons giving this villager a hard time, which gives us an opportunity to practice some combat. In the next area, you fight some more skeletons, make it back to the dojo, and finish the level. This mission just serves as a basic tutorial introducing how the game works to new players, but it's kind of interesting because it's the only mission in the game that doesn't exactly line up with the pilot season, as the scenes in this level don't actually exist in any of the episodes. However, starting with the next level, the story is pretty much one-to-one the same as the pilot episodes, and I found that to be a really welcome surprise given just how much I loved those episodes as a kid. So having a game that was just one-to-one that same story, I loved it. The next level starts with Kai working in his dad's blacksmith shop when Sensei Wu arrives to recruit him, so you, as Sensei Wu, become a public nuisance harassing everyone in the town until they tell you where Kai is. In this section, they introduce some more basic mechanics like mining bricks, which are the main currency that you're going to be using in the game for upgrades and building defensive towers, which actually operate pretty much the same as the last game, but this time they can be upgraded to have certain elements, which is a cool little detail that I thought fits this game really well and just gives a little more variety to an otherwise pretty boring structure. Once you find Kai and Naya, the tower you built starts to get attacked by a horde of skeletons that you and your young grasshopper blow through pretty easily. But in the fight, Naya gets kidnapped, which prompts Kai to join Wu and become the fourth magical ninja. We then get a cutscene showing us the exact same events that we just witnessed a moment ago, but the cutscenes are pretty, so I'm not really complaining. Back at the dojo, Kai takes easily to his training and starts to explore his new home, but is quickly interrupted by the other ninjas who, on my first time playing this, absolutely rocked my shit, because at this point Kai doesn't have any special moves and almost has the same amount of health as the group of 3 enemies that jump you multiple times back to back to back, so the only possible way to actually make it through this section is just to pray and hope that the enemies drop items to let you refill your health, or just pray that you get lucky enough not to line up and get hit, which I actually honestly found much simpler to do the second time I played this level once I realized I needed to create distance to break the groups of enemies apart. Like if you trail one of them off from the larger group, you could pick them off, but if you fight them all together, it's done. Once you get past all that, the level ends with Kai making tea and Wu revealing that the other ninjas are actually Wu's other students, which is exactly what happens in the episode. I'm telling you, this shit is so peak. The team is then tasked with retrieving all 4 golden weapons before Garmadon can steal them. However, the first of which, the Scythe of Quakes, can only be found in the Cave of Despair, so the next level has the team on their way looking for the cave. Along the way, you come across a village that's been ravaged by skeletons, so as the good Samaritan you are, you fight off the enemies and repair the village. This mission is fun because it's the first time you actually get to play with the ninja's elemental abilities, which feel like a good evolution and expansion beyond the abilities in the first game. Like, I know I just complained about the unit variety, but there is something kind of cool about your entire army having unique abilities rather than just one character, so in that way, I see what they were going for. It's pretty fun. And at the end of the level, you run into Chopov in his Harley before he runs away to end the level. The next mission actually starts inside the Cave of Despair, with the ninjas needing to locate the Staff of Quakes. But inside the cave, you come across something that I was not expecting at all. It made me jump out of my chair when I saw it. They have the rock monster. No, listen to me. They have the rock monsters from Power Miners in this game. The rock monsters from Power Miners? Sidebar, this rock monster piece is easily in my top 5 Lego pieces of all time. I was obsessed with this theme as a kid. I would carry around the blue and red monsters to elementary school just to walk around and look at them in the light, like to see the sun shining through the transparent plastic. Oh my god, this theme was amazing. This is really funny though, because there were 2 separate instances now where a Lego Battles game actually borrowed enemies from a different theme than the one that was in the game, and both times that they've done this, it's been a select figure that I had a really strong emotional connection to from an older theme. Like if I had a nickel for every time that happened, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice. Anywho, you explore more of the cave fighting these rock monsters along the way and destroying their nests, which will just infinitely spawn them unless you break them. Fun tip that took me too long to figure out. This level actually feels really reminiscent of a lot of the levels in the original game, with you exploring the twists and turns of a map before finding an object that is just laying on the ground somewhere. No need to fix what ain't broke. But again, this level was just a highlight for me because it included these rock monsters, and I will not shut up about how cool these guys are. Okay, but this next level really got me fucked up because I just didn't understand this really important part of the game, which was how to apply upgrades. It's a little confusing when you don't understand how it works, but I think I got it, and I think I can explain it to you, okay? So just like in the original game, you have a central castle that can create builders and a barracks that can create your soldiers. In the original game, the castle also spawned heroes, but since there's no distinction between heroes and other units, this role then falls to the barracks. So, you create your soldiers in the barracks and builders in the castle, but when they spawn soldiers out of the barracks, they're in their weakest form. So to fix this, you have to go over to your castle where you can spend your gold bricks to unlock the next 2 levels of their upgrades. These additional levels boost their health and damage while granting them abilities that make them actually viable in combat, so this is a necessary thing you have to do. However, you can't do this for multiple people at the same same time, you just have to do it for one unit at a time. So once your army is built, you just have to stand around the castle waiting for these upgrades to unlock. And once this happens, once they're unlocked in the castle, you still aren't ready, which was the mistake I made the first time, taking my army into battle immediately after I unlocked the upgrades, thinking that me waiting that long was enough of a price of entry to have a strong army. I was wrong. What you're actually supposed to do is wait for the upgrade to finish in the castle, and then you can press this little red button on the menu bar where you can individually select the level of each unit, and then they'll actually go into an animation to upgrade. Why the fuck is this so complicated? Why are there so many steps? There is no conceivable reality where you would ever want to drop the level of your units once they're upgraded. It's not like they burn currency once they're upgraded, so why even give the individual units the ability to shift up and down in their levels? I have no idea. I feel like they could have just so easily skipped a step here and made it so the upgrades automatically apply once they're unlocked, or if they just allowed you to purchase units pre-upgraded at a higher cost, but no, they make you sit around every single time. My absolute best guess for why they formatted the upgrades this way is just that they were trying to make it feel more like you were building up your army over time, kind of like you did in the first game, but the fact that there's no tangible feedback for that progress other than this little loading bar just really makes the inclusion of this feature confusing to me. Obviously, I was able to figure it out relatively easily with a developed prefrontal cortex, but I'd imagine this was an element of the game that pissed off and confused many kids, or maybe I'm just dumb, who knows? And the first act ends with you assaulting one of Garmadon's strongholds. The clip that I recorded here cuts off here. I'm like 99.9% sure nothing happens after this point, but it's a non-zero chance that I missed something here. I don't think I did. Act 2 starts up with the team hunting the second golden weapon, the Shurikens of Ice. I personally remember these being my favorite golden weapon as a kid when I played the game of like which ninja would I be that I referenced earlier. I just always liked throwable weapons. Like, tell me throwing knives aren't one of the coolest weapons possible, or just like the tomahawks in Black Ops. It's sick, come on. Anyway, the first step for getting the Shurikens is finding a place called the Ice Fortress. This was the mission where it really started to set into me that this was not going to be a normal LEGO Battles game. And that's because you don't actually build a single unit through this entire level, or frankly through a good number of these levels. But despite lacking any RTS gameplay, this level actually is interesting, just in a different way. The main goal of this level is to lower these ice blocks, which you can do by finding these buttons scattered around the map. This section felt a lot more in line with the type of puzzle solving, kind of button pressing gameplay that you would expect with a more traditional Traveler's Tales LEGO game, so I thought it was kind of cool seeing some more of those elements present in this type of weird format. This level also includes some more of these rock monsters, which are still amazing, just in case you forgot. And the level ends with a cutscene of Zane attempting to Indiana Jones the Shurikens, which of course fails, and summons the Ice Dragon, which is actually a set that I remember having, so I don't know why I have to keep mentioning the sets I had, but I think it's cool. The next mission has you fighting the Ice Dragon, except Zane is now frozen in a block of ice. Good thing robots don't need air. This level features a ton of combat with these weaker rock enemies who are actually pretty satisfying to take out in groups with all of the studs being dropped. Again, this felt a lot more like a traditional LEGO game, fighting enemies and collecting money. Eventually you find the dragon, which causes Zane to break out of the ice and join in the fight. And the level ends with this thrilling boss fight, the moment that all of this work has culminated to. Up next in the golden weapon hunt are the Nunchucks of Lightning, located in the floating ruins, so the team sets off to find them. On your way, you're stopped by some villagers who tell you they're being attacked by some lightning monsters and teach you about the brick bank mechanic, which is the same as the first game. You just pick up these piles and put them in the bank. I think the way that they use the rock monsters here is actually pretty fun, because Ninjago is based around these 4 different elements, and so having enemies that can mirror those elements is just a thing that was actually not present in the sets themselves, but something they adapted for this game that I think works really well. I also imagine it was kind of a nice resource saving thing on the production end, where they could just reuse the same sprites and make them different colors. It's smart, it's good shit, I like it. And the rest of this mission is just you building towers throughout the village to protect from future rock monster attacks, before you eventually find this random chain hanging from the sky that made me think of the fish hooks in SpongeBob. But this chain takes you up to the floating ruins and ends the level. level. Okay, and this has nothing to do with anything at all, but I thought that this image that I just saw out of the corner of my eye on the Ninjago wiki was a picture of a Ninjago Zin, which would go absolutely insane, but sadly that does not exist. At least not yet! Introducing Ninjago Patches. Feeling like you need to jump up and spin? Pop one of Zane's cool menthol upper deckies and you're on your way. Product not regulated by the FDA, licensed by the LEGO Group, or approved by God. All purchases are final and any request for returns will be met with a man in a life-size LEGO Kai costume coming to your house and settling the matter personally. Alright then, back to the game. We get another cutscene showing the gang making their way up to the floating ruins and are dropped into the level. Once they make it up to the floating ruins, they realize that the nunchucks are nowhere to be found, so you explore the map a little bit until you come across this altar which has these spots to insert these lightning rods, which are scattered in different locations around the map. This feels really similar to the ice button puzzle that was in one of the previous levels, and it feels, again, very traditional LEGO game and is unlike any of the objectives in the first game. Of course, though, these rods are being guarded by some more lightning monsters who at this point pose no real threat, but are just fun to mow down, kind of like grunts in Halo. Once you destroy all the monsters' nests and gather all 4 lightning rods, the nunchucks just plop onto the ground. I love this, and will never get tired of it. Just the fact that the items in both of these battles games, like, they don't put it on a table, it's not in a chest, they just kind of appear on the ground like a Baconator wrapper blowing in the wind. It's so good. And the finale for Act 2 is a mission that just starts with the words "prepare for battle" on some like Halo Reach objective survive shit. But this mission stood out to me because it's the first time in the campaign that you actually get to do RTS stuff. The level starts you just with Sensei Wu and 2 builders, but from there you're able to build a barracks, collect gold bricks, and then generally start growing your army. As I've already mentioned, this phase takes a while and is much less engaging than in the first game, so I ended up just watching basketball while I let all of the upgrades unlock, which I just realized now actually tells you how long ago I recorded the gameplay for this, so there's that. Towards the end of my leveling, I started to actually get attacked, but thankfully I was able to fight them off without taking too much damage, and once my ninja army was fully maxed out, I set off to attack the enemy camp. This felt really classic LEGO battle, so it very much satiated this desire for RTS gameplay that I've been having and continuously mentioning. Destroying the enemy base didn't take long, since I'm not sure that they were expecting you to actually wait around as long as I did to level up all of the units, but either way, Act 2 complete. But the start of Act 3, oh my god. No. Yeah, something, that's not. I have 3 separate video files for this level, 2 of which include the word failure in their titles, because goddamn this level is hard, or at least it was for me. The premise is that skeletons are attacking the dojo at night, so all of the ninjas are asleep and you have to wake them up one by one to get their help fighting off the enemies. Sure, okay. The problem is that Cole must have done a Zan 13 hours till he lands because he is out and provides no help, which means that you are getting swarmed by enemies and your only defense is 2 level 1 ninjas who really can't do all that much once the skeletons start ganging up on them. I tried this mission over and over and over again until eventually I got super lucky, because there's a mechanic in this game that I've yet to mention where enemies have a small chance of dropping power-ups that boost one of your stats, either speed, attack, or defense. In this final successful run, I ended up getting a damage boost right at the start of the level, which meant I was able to actually defeat the enemies fast enough to keep Cole alive, and having 3 ninjas versus 2 made such a difference. But despite me thinking I was in the clear, the enemies would not stop spawning, eventually knocking my army down to just Zane, who got overwhelmed and killed. I eventually realized that you could avoid some of the damage by pulling the enemies off of Cole if you just run away from them, which became the tactic that I kept using of just keeping enough distance that I could poke at them and then run away before the enemies could hit back. I worked through a good number of the skeletons, but after a while, Cole got dropped and Jay got knocked down to only 2 HP, but the LEGO Battles gods must have heard my prayers, because right when everything seemed over, the best item that could possibly have spawned in finally spawned in: a max ammo power up. With my health fully restored, I was able to hold off the onslaught just a little longer, but the enemies would not stop spawning. I eventually noticed something really important in this level that I could have mentioned earlier, but I wanted you to feel this moment with me. There's a little timer at the top of the screen. The goal here is not to kill a certain number of enemies as I thought, but just to stay alive until that timer runs out. And once I realized this, I just gave up on combat entirely and just started to try to burn as much time as I could. 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay, wait. What happens now? Don't die. Mission complete! It counts. We died right at the it counts. It counts. It counts. But despite your best efforts, the skeletons do make off with the golden weapons, which leads into the next level. The next level is probably the shortest in the entire game, with the ninjas chasing after the skeleton army that just attacked them. All you have to do here is chase Samukai in the monster truck, stopping occasionally to fight some enemies he spawns, which really isn't difficult. You just fight the enemies and then keep walking after him. But in the end, the ninjas are no match for the power of good old American engineering, and Samukai gets away. Now Kai alone has entered the underworld without any of the other ninjas trying to rescue Naya, but Garmadon expected this and has a plan. Upon entering the underworld, Garmadon tells Kai that it's his job to get the Sword of Fire for him, goading that doing so would be the only way for Kai to save his sister. Despite knowing that this is a trap, Kai can't resist helping his sister, so he goes along with it and gets Naya out of her cage, which then spawns a group of Shadow Clone Jutsus, but thankfully the sword that Kai picked up boosts his stats up to level 2, which makes this section so much easier. Since this mission was another timer-based one, I decided to just post up next to the cage that Naya was in and try to hold out as long as I could. Eventually Sensei Wu comes to your aid just in time because the number of enemies spawning was actually starting to get dangerously close to the last nightmare level I had to deal with. But thankfully this time you have Naya and Wu together, who both have healing abilities, because without them this section would have just been actually impossible. But even still, this mission ended up coming down to me just running around avoiding enemies for as long as I could, because there truly is no way to keep fighting them for the entire time that this timer's counting down without at least one person dying. The mission ends with this sick-ass cutscene of Kai trying to fight with Garmadon's shadows and losing until the shadow of Sensei Wu shows up and puts Garmadon in his place. This cutscene is just a really good example of LEGO humor mixed in with some genuinely awesome visuals. Just great stuff. All of the action happening in the underworld has caused the next elemental dragon to wake up, so in the next mission your only objective is just to get the fuck out of here. I found this mission to be strangely easy, with most of the dragon's attacks getting nowhere near me, but I replayed the mission a little bit later to get the red brick and found that that was not the case, so I think I just got lucky on the first run, but I'll take it. And the mission ends somewhat cryptically, with the last thing being said being Kai saying that there's no way out, and then the mission complete fireworks go off. Like, that dissonance really got my ass. And as I'm sure you could logically put together, the finale of Act 3, the finale of Act 3 is another dragon boss fight, much like the Ice Dragon, but this time we're taking the whole gang to the underworld. Much like the previous finale level in Act 1. What act do you think this is? How did I get this wrong multiple times in the script? Much like the previous finale level in Act 2, this level is more of a traditional LEGO Battles type level, where you actually get to build some structures and level your army, but now there's a dragon flying around while you're doing it, so that immediately adds bonus points. I decided not to bother with upgrading every single unit in my army to max, so I only leveled Naya and left everyone else with rank 1, which apparently was not the smartest move because somehow everyone in my army besides Cole just got completely annihilated. I guess that makes up for the pocket sand comments I made earlier, but somehow I was able to make my way out of this fight and cheese it just by wedging Cole into this really specific spot where the dragon for some reason just couldn't attack me. Like, if you stand directly behind the dragon, none of his attacks can hit you because it doesn't know how to turn around. This was not the case when I had the whole army over here, because I kind of tried the same thing and still the AoE attacks were getting me. But for some reason, when you're down to only one unit and put them in this exact spot, the dragon just can't hit you there. So I used that cheese strat to drop the dragon's health from half to none without taking a single hit of damage. But dude, at this point, I'm just glad to be moving on. The start of Act 4 is actually one of my favorite levels in the game, but when I first played it, I thought it was a joke level. Fuck off. Wait, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. That's not the mission. That's not the mission. What do you mean? What do you mean? But that's not actually the end of the level, but rather the end of this room, which brings me to why this level is my favorite. It's the only one that actually lets you jump across different environments and different areas, which is so much fun. The premise is that the ninjas have to go back to all of the locations where the golden weapons were found so they can see if they missed anything that can free Sensei Wu from the underworld where he is now. Yeah, I thought that was me missing footage, but I went back into the game and they don't actually explain that at all. all. Like, the last time we see Sensei Wu is with Kai and Naya when they say there's no way out, but then Kai and Naya are in the next mission and Wu is just gone. In the actual show, and yes, I went back to the actual show and watched the pilot episodes, which are damn near lost media at this point, but in the actual show, the line that Kai says is, "There's no way out, he's taken away all our options," and then Wu responds with "all but one" and sacrifices himself to take the sword into the underworld and save Kai. And I assume if you're playing this game, you would have also seen the pilot episodes, so you would know that that's what happened and they didn't need to cover it in the game, but the game doesn't explain it at all. Like, the cutscene could have gone on for 2 or 3 more seconds and they could have fit it in there, but regardless, I don't know. I imagine there's at least one kid that I'm talking to right now who was confused by that as a kid. So I want to validate you, that one specific kid who was confused by that. This one's for you. I just thought that this level was great because of the visual variety it offers, because every other level in this game is just one biome, whereas with this one, you actually get a mixture, which I thought was really fun. All that you're actually doing in each region is killing a certain number of enemies before one of them drops a paper clue that you pick up, which unlocks a portal to the next area. Nothing groundbreaking, but again, the portals just make this level stand out. I like that last level, but I love this next one, for obvious reasons. But I also love this level because it features Crazy, who was my favorite one of the skeletons as a kid. This level starts with the gang making it to the underworld and seeing Crazy standing around taking a smoke break. Crazy says he can't tell the ninjas where Garmadon's castle is, but he can make it look like they're chasing him and then thereby lead them to the castle. So you follow him around until he leads you directly into an ambush. After you clear out the enemies, you track down Crazy again and strap a torch to him so the next time he runs away you can still see him. And the way they do this is kind of cool because now he actually shows up on your minimap as one of your units. Even though you can't control him, he still reveals parts of the map, which I thought was kind of neat. Crazy then leads you deeper into the fortress where you fight some more skeletons and destroy some structures. The whole level looks exactly the same, so I don't know why I'm just bringing this up now, but I loved the look of this level, just with the blue and red crevasses and the giant rib cages from God knows what animal. The underworld just looks cool. After catching up to Crazy yet again, you get jumped by another group of skeletons twice, and then the fucker stole my power up. Why did he pick that up? No. He got the boost? Hold on, wait, what? But in the end, it didn't end up mattering because right after he led me to the corner of this cave, which ends the level. Now that you made it to Garmadon's castle, your only objective is to destroy the garrison stationed outside of the main fortress. You meet back up with Crazy and are greeted by a pair of builders who tell you that Naya sent them out to help. And thank God they did this, because at this point, Crazy finally decides to stop helping you and runs off screaming about intruders being in the base. But I do like this level because it's another one where you actually get to go through the process of building up structures and building up your army. I decided not to bother with leveling up my army, but rather go with a strength by numbers approach where I just built up a full army of level 1s, and this actually ended up working pretty good. This level is about as basic as a LEGO Battles level can even be, but again, there's no reason to fix what ain't broke, so it's fine. Moving deeper into the castle, the ninjas are met with some large twisting hallways filled with tricks and traps, as the description before the level says. This part was really fun to me because it's very reminiscent of it like a Diablo dungeon, and because of that it felt really natural with this isometric perspective and control layout where you're tapping where you want to move. You make your way through the dungeon, fighting enemies and exploring different doors until you finally come across this key to the exit. This level's really short, but I still thoroughly enjoyed it because, like I said, this felt more like a Diablo or Elder Scrolls type level in the way that the dungeon was laid out. And honestly, when I play this level, it made me wish there were more levels like it in the game. Just along the lines of thinking that if the goal of this game was to make more of an action-oriented style of game, then these tighter hallways and like these labyrinth-like doors lend themselves so much better to quick action and short spurts of exploration, rather than what they have in most of this game, which is just massive maps you're wandering around. It felt like those larger maps were meant to be explored with a larger army, so when you're exploring them with only 4 ninjas, it feels kind of weird and empty, but these more precise levels lend themselves really well to that smaller team size and still give you enough space to move around the map without going too large and making it feel like you're just kind of wandering around an empty wasteland. This is a good balance. I want more dungeon crawling levels like this in... what I was about to say was like in the next LEGO Battles game, as if they're ever gonna make another one of these, but I just wish there were more of these dungeon crawling type levels in the game because this one's really good. And in the grand finale to the ninja's story, you finally get to face the big bad Lord Garmadon. This level's really similar to all the other finales where you get the builders and you get to upgrade all your units. This process hasn't changed since the last 2 times I talked about it, so I'm not going to get deep into it here. I built up some brick banks near these brick piles, built a keep to get the upgrades going, and waited. But unlike the previous levels, Garmadon's troops are actually a lot more aggressive here and get sent in while you're developing your army. So I had to fight off multiple waves through the upgrading process, which actually made the process go by faster because it was way more interesting. Instead of just standing around, I actually had to manage my troop. Like, I had to actually make sure they weren't getting killed off while they were standing around with their red wireless buzzers in their pockets, waiting to tell them when their upgrades were ready. I initially decided to continue with my strength by numbers approach, which, once I pushed into the enemy territory, absolutely did not fucking work. But somehow I was able to just barely make it through the first wave of enemies, with Kai and Wu being the only 2 clawing for life as I destroyed the last of the enemy structures, which then prompted a second wave to spawn. But thank God I was far enough away from them to just waltz away while the enemy army paced around waiting for me to rebuild. Like, seriously, if the army decided to push out here and aggro on my remaining units, I would have had to restart the whole level. So I honestly got really lucky that this firing squad of skeletons decided to just hold their ground and not move, because them doing so gave me enough time to actually build my army up. Again, I didn't bother with any of the levels because the initial army actually kind of worked, so I just tried the same strategy again. I reasonably assumed at this point that the final enemy was going to be Garmadon, so I wanted my army as juiced as possible, but when you go back up to the top, it's just a couple extra normal skeletons, and then the level ends in a cutscene. Huh? To be fair, the cutscene pretty much covers everything, showing Samukai fighting against Sensei Wu for the golden weapons. Wu gets knocked down and Samukai combines all of them, causing him to explode, and Garmadon's evil plan to be complete. He then, I'm guessing, drains the power out of the weapons and leaves them for the ninjas to pick them up and have this epic moment, but like, that's the big finale of this whole story? There's no boss fight with Garmadon. I suppose you could have called this a boss fight with Samukai because he was one of the many skeletons I fought through, but for a final level, I was really expecting more of like a big health bar on the top of the screen type boss battle. Also, just frankly, I was really confused about what happened in the story, so let me clear that up for you. I actually went back and watched the episode to figure this out, and what happens here is that Samukai's combining of the weapons opens a portal that, quote, goes through space and time that Garmadon enters so he can finally gain the power to harness all 4 of the weapons at the same time. None of this is mentioned in the game, and you may be thinking, come on, aren't you being a little too harsh? It's a Lego game. How good can they convey story through these little cutscenes? Very well, actually, because in the first game, there were some interesting plots and stories that were all conveyed purely through text and had really similar cutscenes, but at no point in that game was I wondering what was going on. My best guess is that this is just a discrepancy between needing to adapt a pre-existing piece of media into a game versus creating a completely original story for a game. But as someone who hasn't watched through the original pilot episodes of Ninjago for well over a decade, there were multiple moments in this game where I was just completely lost as to what was going on in the story until I went back and watched the episodes, which, again, I assume you would have done if you bought this game, so not the biggest deal, but still something I thought was worth noting. But regardless, this ends the ninja story. Overall, quite different from the original Battles game. Some of the changes were better, some, I'm gonna say a lot of them were worse, but as I mentioned earlier in this video, this isn't the only story in the game, because we also have to talk about the skeleton story. I was so hyped to get into this half of the game because I've always loved playing as villains over heroes. Like, I loved it in Lego Batman, I loved playing as Sith in Lego Star Wars, and even in the first Battles game, there was only one story where I preferred the hero over the villain, and that was the pirate one, because arguably that is the villain story. I don't know, depends on who you are. I just think in fantasy, so often villains are just cooler and their designs are better. Go team villain. Anyway, level 1 of the skeleton story starts out with a cutscene where Garmadon summons Samukai and tells him about the golden weapons before sending him off. Immediately, the skeleton story operates more like the original game than the ninja story did, with you starting out only using Samukai and a couple builders and then being tasked with building up your army. After mining through some rocks, you come across a clearing large enough to start building your base, so you place some structures and go through the same process of crafting and upgrading units. Though obviously, instead of being able to craft the ninja team, you now have access to all the unique skeletons that you fought before, including my guy Crazy. But Okay, but be so honest with me, do you remember the names of any of these characters? I remembered Crazy just because I specifically had a card of him, and he was so colorful as a character, and he stuck in my head as a kid. But the other guys, like Chopov, Knuckle, Whiplash, Frackjaw, a lot of these are like almost real words. So because of that, none of these characters really have a strong place in my memory as distinct characters, except for one in particular that stood out to me just because of his name, and that's Cruncha, which hopefully I can say I have a skeleton, so I think I get a pass there. One thing that sets the skeletons apart from the ninjas are the way that they level up. Like the ninjas, they unlock their abilities after the first upgrade and then get stronger after the second, but what's cool about the skeletons in particular is that on their second upgrade, they'll either gain 2 backup units who follow them around, or in a couple specific characters, they'll get a vehicle. And these vehicle units were the absolute coolest part of the game to me, and I know if I played this game as a kid, I would have almost exclusively just used them. The rest of the level is just clearing out rock monsters from the cave until the game decides you've killed enough and sets you free. At this point, I was starting to get a bit tired of waiting around in this game and just wanted to be able to get through the story for this video, so I went back through some of the ninja levels in search of red bricks that might make things a little easier. And just if you were curious, to clarify, not every level in this game has a red brick. There's only 2 per act, so I just decided to go back through some of them and see which red bricks I can find. I only ended up really caring about 2, which were regenerating health and fast magic, as the only real problem I was facing was how long and difficult some of the combat in this game could be, because I feel like I was effectively already using regenning hearts, just in a really slow way where I would fight until my health got low, run away, regen my health, and then go back. So this was kind of just streamlining the process of what I was already doing. So, with my new powers equipped, I moved into the second level of the skeleton story. This mission starts by telling you to find a way to open some portal shortcuts. I thought it was kind of neat that these are the same portals that you use earlier in the game, or I guess later in the story, but as the ninjas towards whatever time period, whatever timeline in the multiverse this is happening on, I don't know. This mission isn't a building one and just starts you with Samukai and the 2 vehicle characters fully leveled up, which should give you an idea of what kind of level this is. That's right, it's another walking around exploring the whole map type level. Woo! Let's fucking go! Yeah, that's actually it. You just walk up to one of the portals and it opens and then the level ends. Banger. So at this point in real life, I took about a month break away from the game, which was actually when I recorded and made my previous video, the browser game one. But because of that, I totally forgot that the red bricks that I had just gathered existed going into the next skeleton levels. And it did end up being fine, but oh my fucking god, the first level back would have been so much easier if I had just put on regen hearts. But really, if anything, now you guys just can't get mad at me for cheating using the red bricks, which was a concern I had, so my stupidity got me around that. So getting into the level, as I just kind of alluded to, this level features a good deal of combat. It's pretty cool though, just because this is a flip of the same mission where Wu first meets Kai, which means that you actually have to fight Kai and a group of samurai who are defending the city. And oh my god, these guys kicked my ass the first time I tried this level. I somehow ignored the fact that I had builders and just charged directly in, which of course didn't work out. But once I realized that this was a build up units and then fight type level, I was set. I stuck with a smaller army here, but leveled them all the way up, so once I made it back to the city, Kai was no match. There was this moment though, at the very end, where I got stuck on this tiny piece of grass and the enemies crowd in front of me, but I was somehow at an angle where I couldn't actually attack them, nor could I reposition myself or run away, because as I said, I was stuck on a tiny piece of grass. So thank god that my abilities came back right at this moment to help me clear out these enemies, because if I couldn't do that, I would have had to restart this level and this section of the video would be a lot angrier. But with that save made, the level ends with a cutscene where the skeletons are searching for the golden weapons in the village, and in typical Lego Three Stooges humor, almost burned the village down. This cutscene is cute, I liked it. Moving to the next level, they don't actually show it happening, but at this point the skeletons have captured Naya and taken her back to the caves, but unfortunately she's escaped somewhere within the caves, and now it's your job to try to track her down. This level has you chasing Naya through different areas of the caves, fighting off rock monsters until you finally trap her in a corner and recapture her. That's the whole level. And for the finale of the skeleton side of Act 1, we actually get such a sick boss fight that I was not expecting at all. Going into the skeleton story, I was genuinely wondering how they were going to deal with the fact that the skeletons didn't have dragons to serve as their bosses, but I had no idea how ready for that challenge this game actually was. Instead of fighting the ninjas at the end of Act 1 as I kind of expected, you square up with a massive rock monster who was also from Rock Raiders, which is, sorry, no, I put Power Miners. I wrote Rock Raiders in the script, it's actually from Power Miners. Anyway, it's from a set from Power Miners, which is actually worth $250 now if it's sealed. Jesus, that's not that big of a set. But I totally remember this monster, and I just love that they keep using Power Miners stuff. It makes me so happy. The general flow of this level is exactly the same as many of the other levels I've mentioned at this point. Build shit, upgrade shit, blah, blah. But what makes this level so cool to me is the rock monster itself. I was really expecting the theme crossovers to end just with the small rock monsters, so I was really happy to see even more Power Miners representation in this game. As I said, this monster is based off a real set, the Crystal King, but I feel like they actually made the version in the game look so much cooler than the set it's based on, mostly because his legs aren't part of it. Like, these weird stubby legs he has in the set are just buried underground in the game, so it looks kind of like a snake. It's so much cooler. Anyway, this fight went how all of the other boss fights did, where you surround the boss, wait for their health to drop, and stand there. But this one got dangerously close to me failing it, with almost all of my units ending up at 1 HP, but after having patience and holding out, we finally took out the rock monster. And that was all of the LEGO battles that I could handle. I was initially planning to do a full playthrough of the game, but based on how long this video already is, I just did not think it was worth it, especially if I'd just be playing through a mirror of a lot of the same missions I had already played in the first half. I at least wanted to show off some of the skeleton campaign, so I wanted to commit to finishing a single act, but I think we kind of covered it, man. I really doubt there's anything in those last 3 acts that I'm missing, or last 2 acts that I'm missing that much. But there is one more thing I am missing in the game, and that is a huge chunk of the game, the free play. I will say this is probably the strongest area of this game. This game took everything that the first game did with free play mode and just multiplied it by 50. There's more game modes, more maps. I'm not really sure that there's more characters because there's less variety in the unit types, but there are new characters unique to this game that aren't from Ninjago, like the wrestler Pharaoh that I mentioned. So in a way, I guess there's more. You can purchase these extra characters from the shop, with many of them being locked behind what the game calls conquest points, which is a system that I was confused by until I saw the top screen and came to realize it's just a reflection of your completion percentage, i.e. the more stuff you do in the game, the more characters you unlock. I fuck with it. I just didn't get it at first. So once you've unlocked a character using that system, you can then purchase them using the studs you've been collecting dropped by the enemies through the games. You can also use these studs to unlock more maps, hints, and concept art. But moving back to free play itself, there's some interesting game modes here that made me completely flip my opinion on this game's free play. Originally, this section was just me bashing on how similar the free play was to the story and how I felt like this game wasn't as good as the first, but then I looked into the alternate modes a little bit more and completely changed my mind. The first mode is Annihilation, which is just your basic battles mode, and actually the one I was talking shit about. This one and Brick Collection make a reappearance from the first game. You just compete to see who can gather money the fastest or who can destroy each other's army the fastest, but beyond those two, every other game mode is unique to this game. The first of these new modes, Capture the Flag, is about what you would expect. There's a flag at each base, and it's your job to take the enemy's flag from their base and return it to yours. But this game mode just works so well in the style of this game, and seeing it in this game, I was so shocked that it wasn't in the first, because it just works so well. When I was exploring this mode, this was the first time that I had ever played with the alternate characters, and once I did, something actually clicked in my head. A ton of these alternate characters are actually just units from the other game. For example, the wizard's first evolution is a troll, and the king's first evolution is a horse. So technically I was correct in saying that most of the fun units from the first game were taken out, but I was a little wrong because some of them got like partially repackaged within some of these legacy characters. I do wish that difference was used more amongst the main characters in the game. Like, I wish the ninjas could turn into a dragon or something along the lines of that. But at least for the side characters, I was really pleased to see that some of my complaints about the unit variety were somewhat incorrect because they were addressed by the inclusion of these other alternate character forms. You know, if I'm running out of breath, the sentence was too long. There wasn't a single period in that motherfucker. Okay, so for the mode itself, which is Capture the Flag, if I somehow got off track of that, round one went horribly because I somehow fell behind the enemy army, so by the time I decided to actually send a scout over and see what was happening, the enemy flag was boxed up tighter than one of those little like plastic packages with the shitty textured sides that are just like melted together and you can't you know what I'm talking about? The ones that like if you cut it with scissors, you just cut the edge and then the edges still see it. It's one of those pains in the ass. You know what I'm talking about. But the next round I got a head start and realized because the movement in this game is so janky, once you take the flag and walk away, it's pretty much impossible for the enemy to keep up with you. So once you get the flag out of their base, you've basically won. The next mode I want to talk about is King of the Hill, which again just makes so much sense for this type of game and shocks me that it wasn't in the first. I like this one better than Capture the Flag because both teams are fighting over a neutral area, so you're able to move your units in early without worrying about like immediately facing the enemy's entire army like you would if you have to go into their base to cap the flag. The mode is fine in itself, but this was the point in the game where I started just getting so sick of the quirks, like just from being able to walk anywhere to the fact that every single thing you do takes 15 fucking years. Oh my god! I actually wrote this part of the script while I was still in game waiting to build units because that's every single fucking thing from fighting an enemy to building a structure to upgrading a unit takes so fucking long. Like at first I would just say it's my TikTok attention span, it's the 2025 brain, but I swear to god the first game did not make you wait around this much. It seems like every combat encounter lasts 20 seconds longer than it did in the first game, which makes replaying this game just an absolute chore. I just feel like instead of playing the game, you're often sitting around waiting to play the game, but at that point the whole game is waiting, so what are you even waiting for? The next new game mode I want to talk about is one of two PvE modes, which I am so glad were the last things I played for this game because I actually think they're my favorite part of the whole thing. The first one, Goliath, is a time-based mode where you're supposed to find and take out a beast really similar to the bosses in the story as fast as you can. This mode is amazing because you get to just go straight into combat, there's no other bullshit, and on top of that you get to do the most satisfying thing to do in this game, which is clear out large groups of weak enemies, because as you're fighting the main beast, it'll spawn little swarms of rock monsters, which you can use magic on and just make it look like the 4th of July. I love this mode. Showed me that they understood what was fun about this game. I don't know why they took so long to reveal it and slow burn it, but it's here now. On top of that, the beast design for this creature is just awesome. I actually don't know what it's from though. Like, it seems like it's an original character. I know it's not from Power Miners or Ninjago. If it's from another theme, let me know, but as far as I know, I think this was just made up for the game. Either way, it looks sick. And the final mode, which is the best mode in either LEGO Battles game that should have been in both of them, that if I played this game as a kid would have been how I spent all of my time. They have a zombie survival type, like round-based survival mode. What a match, mate. It makes too much sense. It's too good. It's too good. I just have to figure out how to make money off this.
It's simply too good.
This mode honestly feels like the central thing that this entire idea was trying to like build towards. This feels like the precipice that that Battles as a concept has been striving for. Like, a ton of the stuff I was complaining about in the game suddenly clicks together and makes sense. Like, waiting around makes a lot more sense in this mode because you're not just waiting, it's counting down the seconds until the next wave. So now there's some pressure and you actually have to utilize that time. This mode works so well. I think the only problem with it, like the only limitation, is just the console they put it on. By that I mean the first few rounds are fine, but once you get into the later waves where more and more enemies spawn, every single new wave drops the game below like 5 FPS and it just starts chugging. It got so bad at a point I wasn't able to interact with anything on the screen at all. Like in this clip, I'm rapidly clicking and nothing is happening just because the game is so overstimulated with information it can't process anything. But since there are so many enemies on screen, this mode lends itself really well to something I just mentioned that's super satisfying, wiping out large waves of weak enemies. Just to give a little summary over my experience playing through this mode, I filled out my army, max leveled everyone, and then built the max numbers of towers you can build, so I knew I was in for the long haul. With this setup, I survived over 20 minutes before reaching what I assumed was going to be the last wave, because it was just an all-out assault, using every single skeleton unit available all at once, and this was where the game started to freeze up on me. But somehow I was able to scrape by and clear out all the enemies, only to realize that they weren't staying dead. Yeah, on this last wave, they just keep spawning enemies, but every time you kill one, they pop back up. So at this point, it's not really a test of how well you've built up your defenses as much as it's a test of how many enemies the DS can handle as a piece of hardware. Eventually, these endless waves did manage to wear down my outer layer of towers and started to take down some of my units, signaling that this was the end, but just moments before I lost everything, the game stopped. My first reaction was assuming that I died and lost because I couldn't read the banner at the top of the screen, but it turns out the game just caps at 30 minutes, so hey, guess what? That's a gold medal, baby! Who's a Lego god? That's right, me! But again, I cannot overstate how much of an absolute blast this mode was. It took all of my complaints that I had about this game and made them make a little bit more sense. So I'm so glad this was the last thing I touched in this game, just because now we're ending on such a positive note. Because with that, we have pretty much covered all of what Ninjago Battles has to offer. At this point in writing the script, I have no concept of how long this video will be in minutes, but in reading the script, I know it's going to be just over an hour, so sorry about that. This video took a really long time to make, like I think the longest of any of the videos I've worked on, maybe other than the first one where I didn't know what I was doing at all. I've been working on this video for months. I started recording the first clips of it the day after that I put up my Lego Battles video, but life happens, I played other games, I got another video, whatnot, we're finally here. But hopefully there's some ratio between how long you had to wait and how long this video is that makes it feel worth it. Getting to the conclusion though, this game is a really interesting one. I would honestly assume that the one that you prefer between the two games is based solely on whichever one you played first. So along those lines of thinking, there is no doubt in my mind that this game has its fans. I am just not fully convinced that I am one of them. Like, technically, I should like this game because it's a sequel to a game I love, featuring characters I grew up with and love, but the entire time I was playing it, I couldn't help but feel like it was just a shadow of the game that came before, which is the one I played first. As a Ninjago game, this game works pretty well for telling the story of the pilot season and lets you play as a variety of characters from the show, some of which don't appear in other games, so as a Ninjago fan, it's pretty cool. And as a multiplayer game, I could see this being a source of tons of hours of joy for kids who played it with their friends. And just more generally, as a kid's game on a handheld, this game is awesome because I know damn well I would have been spending time in that survival mode during car rides as a kid. But as an RTS, and as what I have understood Lego Battles games to be, this game just does not have enough complexity to really make it worth getting past all the clunk. I do think this game conceptually shot itself in the foot just by basing itself around a single theme, because one of the things that made the original game so interesting that I praised in that first video was that they pulled from a variety of Lego themes to make a game that felt kind of like the Smash Bros of Lego, which made it timeless and just made it interesting regardless of when you played it or when you grew up. That's still kind of possible here, but over half of the roster is just characters from Ninjago, which is fine if you like Ninjago, but it pigeonholes this game into only really appealing to a small group of people who grew up with that particular franchise. And for that reason, I would say only play this game if you like Ninjago. Otherwise, play the first one. Or play none of them, frankly. Maybe at this point, these games are better off just watching YouTube videos about and not playing. I personally love this game a ton, but if I try to view it more objectively, it becomes a lot harder to start to praise it. It's a product of its time and a fascinating part of Lego and Nintendo history, but at this point, I just think you're better off watching someone on the internet talk about the game than actually playing it for yourself. Thanks for watching.